Good to have you with us. This is ARIRANG News. It's 2 p.m. here in Seoul, and I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. The stories we're following at this hour. Pyongyang says its unilateral wage hike for North Korean workers at the Inter-Korean factory complex in Kaesong is legitimate. Seoul wants talks on the matter, but the deadline for that expires today. Tensions are high in Ferguson in the U.S. state of Missouri after 2 police officers were shot and wounded during a peaceful rally. Officials are looking for the suspects. And Koreans are reading less on average these days than in the past. No matter the cause, paper books and the stores that sell them could soon be in for some big trouble. Now, South Korea has been asking North Korea to talk about the regime's unilateral decision to increase wages for workers at the Inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex. With Pyongyang saying the hike was legitimate, some observers say this could lead to another shutdown at the factory zone. ARIRANG's Connie Kim has more.
Tensions are brewing over the Kaesong industrial complex as South Korea's offered deadline for talks over North Korea's unilateral decision to raise workers' wages at the complex expires on Friday. Last month, North Korea decided to up its workers' minimum monthly wage by 5% to $74. To this announcement, South Korea remained firm, calling on the North to come forward for discussions over wages. Seoul also said that unless the two sides reach an agreement, it would penalize South Korean companies complying with the wage hike. South Korean operators at Kaesong have expressed concerns that a wage increase could affect their business. But a day before the deadline, Pyongyang said the wage hike is a legitimate and normal exercise of its legislative rights, adding that it has no intention of negotiating with Seoul over its decision. Some worry the tug-of-war could lead to a shutdown similar to what happened in 2013. But others say Pyongyang has too much to lose for another halt.
North Korea is trying to get the upper hand over Seoul in regards to decisions at the Kaesong complex. It may also be trying to earn more foreign currency by enforcing the wage hike.
Since opening in 2004, the Kaesong industrial complex has been a symbol of inter-Korean economic cooperation and a significant source of income for the North. Experts forecast inter-Korean talks over wages at Kaesong could start once the joint South Korea-US military drills wrap up in April. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
South Korea and the U.S. wrapped up one part of their annual joint military exercises taking place this month. Key Resolve is the one that came to a close this morning. It's a computerized command post drill involving some 10,000 South Korean troops and 8,600 American forces. Full Eagle, which will run until April 24th, is a field training exercise involving more than 200,000 troops from Seoul and Washington. They perform a set of land, sea, and air maneuvers with the 3,000-ton combat ship USS Fort Worth participating for the first time this year. Pyongyang claims that the drills are a rehearsal for war, while South Korea and the U.S. maintain that they are aimed at defending possible provocations from North Korea. Russia is set to hold a ceremony in May commemorating the end of World War II, but an increasing number of Western leaders are boycotting the event, citing Moscow's involvement in the current Ukraine crisis. One of the latest figures to join is British Prime Minister David Cameron. Here's ARIRANG's Hwang Sung-hee.
British Prime Minister David Cameron has joined the growing list of Western leaders boycotting Russia's Victory Day parade in May. His official spokeswoman said Thursday local time that Britain will consider its representation in Moscow on May 9th in light of its concerns about their activities, adding there are no plans for Cameron to attend. This just a day after German Chancellor Angela Merkel said she will skip the ceremony, citing Russian actions in Crimea and eastern Ukraine. The annual event marking the end of World War II has served as a symbol for East-West reconciliation in the past, with leaders from the U.S., Germany, and other Western countries honoring the estimated 20 million Soviet lives lost in the war with Nazi Germany. U.S. President Barack Obama's spokesman said earlier this year that he too will stay away. A handful of Eastern European leaders, anxious about Russian expansionism, have also rejected Moscow's invitation. For now, the most prominent confirmed guests, according to the Kremlin, will be Chinese President Xi Jinping and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Kim's attendance in Moscow, his first overseas trip since assuming power in 2011, will be another show of the cozy ties between Russia and North Korea. The two recently designated 2015 as a year of friendship, promising expanded political, economic, and cultural cooperation. But analysts say Russia's blossoming relationship with North Korea will only deepen its isolation from the West. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Members of a United Nations forum are calling for stronger measures to bring those found guilty of wartime sex crimes to justice. Among those taking part is the former UN Special Rapporteur Gay McDougall, who's calling on world leaders to show a determination to resolve the issue. McDougall suggested the UN give more diverse opportunities to active individuals and civic groups for the cause of women's rights. The forum is held to raise awareness about Japan's wartime atrocities, including its sexual enslavement of tens of thousands of Asian women. Now, tensions are running high in Ferguson after the shooting of two police officers. Authorities said the shooter, still at large, pointed the barrel at his subjects simply because they were uniformed officers. The manhunt for the attacker continues. Son Jung-in reports.
It was around midnight Wednesday local time when at least 3 gunshots broke out outside police headquarters in Ferguson as a group of demonstrators was beginning to disperse after a peaceful rally. The shootings left 2 police officers wounded, one in the face and the other in the shoulder. Both officers have been released after being treated at a local hospital and are expected to make a full recovery. U.S. President Barack Obama and Attorney General Eric Holder have both condemned the shooting, which Holder called an ambush, and have promised to hold the perpetrators accountable.
What happened last night was a pure ambush. This was not someone trying to bring healing to Ferguson. This was a damn punk who was trying to sow discord in an area that is trying to get its act together.
A manhunt for those responsible is ongoing. Several people have already been brought in for questioning, but no suspects have been named and no arrests made. The incident took place as demonstrators gathered at Ferguson Police Headquarters to demand changes in law enforcement practices following a scathing report by the Justice Department that found widespread racial discrimination within the city's police force and court system. Ferguson has been at the center of racial tensions in America following the shooting death of 18-year-old Michael Brown triggered nationwide demonstrations last year. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
The case of Kim Ki-jong, the man who assaulted U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert last week, has been sent to prosecutors. Police say Kim faces charges of attempted murder, assaulting a foreign envoy, and obstruction of business. Authorities say they don't have hard evidence yet to charge him with violating the national security law, which prohibits, quote, activities compromising the safety of the state, but they add that based on his testimony, Kim appears to harbor a pro-North Korea attitude and anti-American sentiment. Lippert told police on Thursday that he felt Kim harbored murderous intent and wants him punished. Police are also investigating whether anyone else was involved in the attack. In the year 2012, for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. The broadcasting industry is a comprehensive package of everything related to a creative economy. That's what President Park Geun-hye said at a ceremony marking the 20th anniversary of the launch of cable television in Korea. She said the industry sits at the center of a convergence of the arts and culture, video art, and information and communications technology, adding that merging Korean culture with world-class ICT will help the cable TV industry become Korea's next growth engine. The president also said rapid technological developments in the ICT arena and intensifying media competition call for creativity and innovation in the industry. Now, late last year, we reported on the hacker who leaked sensitive information about Korea's nuclear power plants. The hacker remained silent for a few months, but came back on Thursday demanding money in exchange for not selling the hacked data to other countries. Lee Ji-yoon has more.
The hacker that threatened to shut down Korea's nuclear facilities last year has come back with a fresh threat. Using the same Twitter account, the hacker demanded money and warned that countries in Northern Europe, Southeast Asia, and South America want to buy Korea's nuclear reactor information. No specific amount was mentioned, but the message said nuclear authorities should send an email to the stated address if it's willing to pay the hush money. Along with the threat, more than 20 files were released, including floor maps and an alleged transcript of a phone conversation between President Park Geun-hye and UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon. The presidential office of Cheongwade says it won't confirm whether the transcripts are authentic. The state-run Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Company says it's looking into how the information got leaked and how sensitive the documents are. The threat comes about 3 months after the hacker threatened to destroy power plants if the company didn't halt operations at 3 nuclear facilities by Christmas last year. However, no damage was done even after the deadline passed, and the nuclear power company insisted the released data posed no threat. However, the hacker's comeback is a worry, as he or she still hasn't been identified, even after several weeks of investigation. Lee Ji-yoon, ARIRANG News.
And shifting gears to the economic front, the weakening Korean won against the greenback and a pickup in global oil prices led to a rebound in both export and import prices last month. The Bank of Korea says export prices went up by 1.5% in February from a month earlier, while import prices rose nearly 3%. Prices of imported goods were up for the first time in a year, a sign that downward pressure on inflation might be easing. However, analysts are skeptical as to whether the rebound will be sustained, as expectations over a rate hike in the U.S. in the coming months are putting downward pressure on global crude prices. Now, Japan's stimulus and monetary easing initiatives have so far fallen short of reviving the country's decades-long economic slump. Tokyo has recently made raising wages a top priority, but will this measure meet expectations? ARIRANG's Kim Min-ji has more.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has made it a top priority to raise wages, saying that it is the key to success in Abenomics. The aim is to spur domestic consumption with the hope of escaping from a low-growth trap.
Companies need to raise wages and investment and consider the prices they pay their suppliers.
Last year, Japan's large corporations lifted their wages by nearly 2.3% on average, the largest jump in 17 years. About half of listed firms are also considering raising wages by a similar amount this year.
People around me are spending more. I think the wage hike has had a big impact.
The Abe administration has been going all out to sustain the economy's emergence from 2 decades of stagnation, mainly by pumping in more money. Korea has also been taking stimulus measures in the wake of low consumer prices and fears of deflation. The nation's finance minister has vowed to do all he can to prop up the economy, which includes raising wages. Minister Choi Kyung-wan says the U.S. and Japan are pushing companies to raise wages to boost consumption. But some experts warn that caution is needed because the expected benefits may not kick in as seen in Japan so far. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
How many books do you read a month? Reading more books almost never fails to make it onto lists of New Year's resolutions for many Koreans, but the reality is that fewer people are picking up books these days. ARIRANG's Kwon So-ah has this story.
An adult literacy rate of 98%. Roughly 7 out of 10 go to university. But the average household in Korea buys fewer than 1 book a month. Somewhat ironic, but Koreans' interest in reading seems to be fading. Last year, only 5% of Koreans over 13 years old said their favorite hobby was reading. That's down from 8% in 2004. These figures make bad reading for bookstores, especially the small and mid-sized ones.
The reading population seems to be going down as the economy isn't doing well. Most small bookstores are losing money.
But it would be unfair to say the sluggish economy should take all the blame.
People are just choosing to spend their money on other things. With the rising amount of academic and work-related stress, they feel the need to release that by entertaining themselves in a more active way than reading.
While spending on culture and entertainment in Korea has risen for 10 straight years, spending on books has decreased steadily for the past 4. The amount of money the average household in Korea spent on books last year slumped to a record low. But while paper book sales are down, one of Korea's major bookstores, Kyobo, has seen a big success in its 2-year e-book service history, as its customers read nearly 15 books a year. But there's skepticism too.
It's hard to say the rise in e-books will reignite Korea's lost love for reading, as the majority of e-book readers are those who already are passionate readers of conventional books.
Experts say a key way to restore an interest in reading is to encourage people to perceive it as a hobby that can be shared with other people. For example, at book cafes that promote reading as a culture of its own. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
As with any industry, Korean cinema must evolve, and one of the things that's constantly changing is its stars. Every year, new actors emerge on the scene representing the changing state of viewers' tastes. Our movie critic Pierce Conran joins us to tell us about the actors in Korea and some of the rising stars. Good afternoon, Pierce.
Good afternoon to you.
So before we talk about some of the new faces, let's talk about the big names. Who would you consider to be the big stars at the moment in the Korean movie industry?
Well, I suppose it's a question that needs to be addressed on two fronts, because on the one side we have the stars who are just incredibly popular, and then there are those who have proven like box office clout, the ones that can actually draw a large amount of viewers to the theaters. So if we look at those people, I would say there's actually not that many, and even then, those that are successful have had their share of misfires. But I would say near the top of the list would have to be Song Kang-ho, who's been a big star for quite some time. And if we look at his performance in 2013, his most recent 3 films were all that year: Snowpiercer, The Face Reader, and The Attorney, and they drew almost 30 million viewers to theaters, which is of course a record for one person, one actor in a year. And then we have Choi Min-sik, another very long-standing, reliable star, who has now just had his biggest hit of all time, Roaring Currents, which is of course the biggest film of all time at the Korean box office. Beyond them, I would say that there have been some other relatively reliable stars, but they each have a number of flops between them, and those would be Ri Sung-young and Kim Yoon-suk.
All right. So experiences, I mean, they of course come with age, but it seems like all the names that you mentioned, they're all middle-aged men. I think that's what they have in common for now.
Absolutely. It's true. It's something I've noticed for a long time since I've been watching Korean films, that we can see over the decades of Korean cinema, the big stars that have driven the industry tend to be middle-aged men. And that starts in the 80s with An Sung-ki, and his kind of mantle was followed up by Park Chung-eun, and then Han Seok-kyu, and then of course Song Kang-ho and others beyond him. And why are they so popular? There's perhaps a few reasons for that. One is that they can hit a number of demographics. You know, they have a way of appealing to young people and also to older audiences, and kind of as kind of authority figures. They kind of get that young group of viewers coming out. But beyond that, they're also kind of down to earth and relatable. And you'll notice that among these stars are not exactly the beautiful, handsome, chiseled Brad Pitts that you see in Hollywood. They're pretty, let's say, not incredibly attractive. And it's always, I always find that very interesting. And it makes them, again, they're just very, very relatable. But the troubling side, the other side of that is that we don't see any women in that position in the Korean film industry. They don't have the same kind of clout. And we have people like Jeon Do-yeon, who's very popular and has had a few hits, but mostly we're not seeing that. And female actresses tend to be relegated to roles of mothers and of lovers, and they don't get the same kind of great content.
I guess that's one of the problems or the reality that the industry faces. But if we start talking about that, that opens up a different topic of discussion. So let's put that behind. But shifting back to the new faces, who are some of the actors that are on the scene of late?
Well, there's really a huge amount to mention, so I'll just get right into it. We have Kim Woo-bin, who is a major TV star who kind of transitioned to movies recently with Friend the Great Legacy and then The Con Artist, and he will be seen later this month in 20. Alongside him, another person from TV is Lee Min-ho, who's just incredibly popular, and he's been in films before, but he had his debut lead role earlier this year in Gangnam Blues. Perhaps most popular of all is Kim Soo-hyun, who is just a massive star both here and in China.
Right.
And he's only been in one film so far, which was Secretly Greatly, but his presence alone made that one of the biggest hits of 2013. Not just men, though. We have a lot of popular young female stars, including Bae Soo-ji, who was in Architecture 101 a few years ago and will next be seen probably this summer in the period film The Hymn. And then there's Shim Eun-kyung, who was one of the leads in Sunny from a few years ago and was really well recognized for her leading role in Miss Granny, the Lunar New Year of last year.
Okay, so the person that we just saw was Soo-ji, and we didn't get to see Shim Eun-kyung, but all of them really tried their best to get to where they are now. Any other names that you might want to mention at this point?
Again, there are quite a few people who have been kind of working pretty hard, getting a lot of attention, but haven't quite broken through yet. Among them, and one of actually a personal favorite of mine, is Chun Woo-hee, who is...
Chun Woo-hee, that's a new name.
Yes,
for me,
she's been around for a while, but in much smaller roles. But she really broke out recently. She was in the film Hangongju, which I adored, this indie film that did quite well, and she won a number of accolades for that. And she will next be seen in Na Hong-jin's Kaesong. She will be seen in The Guest and also in The Beauty Inside. So plenty of credits for her, and there's more besides that. Then there's Kim Go-eun, who made a big splash when she debuted in Eun-gyo a few years ago,
that's the film that I remember.
Right, alongside Park Hae-il, kind of as the ingenue, and she really kind of drew a lot of notice for that. Then she was in Monster last year, which was less popular, but she's got some big stuff coming. Next month she will be in Chinatown alongside Kim Hae-soo, and then she will of course be in the big period action film Memories of the Sword with Lee Byung-hun and Jeon Do-yeon.
Wow.
And there's a couple of other really busy stars who haven't really kind of connected. They're very well known, and people are expecting them to be big stars. Hasn't happened quite yet. Those would be Kang Han-woo, who was in Morning Grave, Sesibon, and Empire of Lust, which is currently in theaters, not doing so well. And then we have Yo Jin-gu, who was in Hwaye Monster Boy, and he will be in Western Front. He was also in a small role in Taja 2 last year. And then there's Yoo Yeon-suk, who's been in lots and lots of films, like The Whistleblower, The Royal Tailor, and soon he will be in Secret Temptation.
Right. So how do you feel? I noticed that none of the names that you mentioned involve some of the idol K-pop stars, and I know that they've really made debut on the movie screen, quite a lot of them. So how do you feel about those fresh crops there?
Well, there's a huge amount of them that have been kind of coming in from that kind of K-pop field into films, and honestly, though I've been skeptical, I have to say I've been quite impressed by a number of them. Among those would be Park Hyu-chun from JYJ, who debuted on the big screen in Haemu last year, which was a big favorite of mine. And then there was Lee Jun, a member of M Black, who was in Rough Play a few years ago. And again, both of those actors impressed a lot of people. Lee Jun won an award at the Wildflower Independent Film Awards last year for Best Newcomer. And then, of course, as already mentioned, there was Bae Soo-ji, who's an enormously popular star.
Okay, so how would you say this young group of bundle is different from the previous actors, the middle-aged, very veteran actors and actresses?
I suppose, as you would expect, they certainly reflect a more modern Korea. They're very well dressed. They're very good-looking. They're very kind of graceful and well-mannered, and I think given their training backgrounds, a lot of them are kind of K-pop stars, really intensely trained from a young age. They kind of come to the film scene kind of fully equipped. They can really hold their own quite well. My only problem, and I can also say they also bring a lot of big fan bases, but my only problem, I think, is that they kind of resemble each other quite a lot in many ways, and they don't always have the same amount of character as you would like from a big star actor. So, because that's really, in the end of the day, real star charisma, not just popularity, is something that can't just be learned.
Okay, well, we'll have to see. I mean, potentials, sometimes they just come out of nowhere, and you don't know when that potential really comes out of a person. So we'll have to wait and see how these young stars do. Thank you very much, Pierce, today for coming in and sharing your analysis today.
My pleasure, as always.
And that's ARIRANG News for now. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. Thanks for watching. More updates coming up at 4 p.m. Korea time.